I worked 26 hours straight. My scrubs smelled like antiseptic and coffee. My feet burned inside worn-out sneakers, and all I wanted was to crawl into bed. But when I opened the front door, I saw something in my kitchen that made my blood run cold. A second refrigerator, brand new, shining under the fluorescent light, and standing beside it, arms crossed, was my daughter-in-law Veronica. She looked at me like I was a stranger who'd just broken into her home. "That fridge is mine," she said, her voice flat and cold. "From now on, Esperanza, buy your own food." I stood there, keys still in my hand, too tired to understand what was happening. Then I saw the labels, little sticky notes with her name on every jar, every carton of milk, every package of bread I had bought with my own money. And I realized this was just the beginning. If you're new here, welcome to Every Smile Hides a Story. We share real stories about real people, the kind you won't forget. Subscribe if you believe kindness still exists, even in the hardest places. We post new videos every day, and trust me, you'll want to hear what comes next. My name is Esperanza. I'm 67 years old, and I've been a nurse for 43 years. I raised my son Damian alone after his father left when he was 3. I can still remember those early years, the sound of his little feet running through our tiny apartment, the way he'd wrap his arms around my legs when I came home from my shift. Back then, we had nothing, but we had each other. I worked double shifts, night shifts, weekends. I missed school plays and birthday parties. I missed so much, but I told myself it was worth it. Every sacrifice, every missed moment. It was all so Damian could have a better life than I did. I bought this house with savings scraped together from decades of exhaustion. Every tile, every window, every door, I paid for it. The down payment alone took me 8 years to save. I remember the day I signed the papers, my hand shaking as I wrote my name. This house wasn't just property. It was proof that all those years of pain meant something. Damian knew that, or at least I thought he did. He grew up in this house. He knew what it cost me. When he was 16, I showed him the mortgage papers, the receipts, the bank statements. I wanted him to understand the value of hard work. I wanted him to be proud. And he was. Back then he was. When he married Veronica 2 years ago, I was happy. I thought finally he won't be alone. Finally he'll have someone to share his life with. I gave them the guest room, the biggest bedroom after mine, with windows that caught the morning light. I cooked for them. I tried to be the kind of mother-in-law I would have wanted. I gave them space. I didn't ask too many questions. I tried to be helpful without being intrusive. But Veronica had other ideas. She smiled in front of Damian, but when he wasn't looking, her face changed. She'd sigh loudly when I entered a room, like my presence was an inconvenience. She'd roll her eyes when I spoke, as if everything I said was ridiculous. Little things. Things I told myself didn't matter. I made excuses for her. She's young. She's adjusting. She's stressed from work. But that night, standing in front of that second fridge, I couldn't pretend anymore. The fluorescent light hummed overhead, harsh and unforgiving. My legs ached from standing all day at the hospital. I'd just finished a shift where I'd lost a patient, a woman my age, who died alone because her family never visited. And now I was here, in my own kitchen, being told I couldn't eat my own food. "What are you talking about?" I said, my voice barely above a whisper. She pointed at the labels with a manicured finger, her nail polish blood red. "Everything in this fridge is mine. What's in the other one you can have. But don't touch my stuff." I felt something crack inside my chest. "Veronica, I bought most of that food. Just yesterday She cut me off with a wave of her hand. "Doesn't matter. Damian pays for it now. This is his house too, remember?" The way she said it. His house too. Not our house. Not the family home. His house. Like I was just living here by permission. I wanted to scream. I wanted to say, "This is my house. I have the deed in my drawer. My name is on every document." But I was too tired. Too shocked. The words stuck in my throat like stones. So I just nodded and went to my room. I didn't eat that night. I couldn't. I lay in bed, still in my scrubs, staring at the ceiling, wondering how my life had come to this. The labels spread like a disease. Within a week, they were everywhere. On the dish soap, on the laundry detergent, on the roll of toilet paper in the bathroom. I came home one afternoon and found a label on the coffee pot. Veronica's. Do not use. I stared at it for a long time, my hands shaking. I'd bought that coffee pot 15 years ago. It had been a gift to myself after a particularly brutal winter of overnight shifts. But it didn't stop there. The shampoo, the hand soap by the kitchen sink, the box of tea bags I kept in the cupboard. Even the salt and pepper shakers on the dining table had little tags attached with thin wire. I felt like I was living in a store where everything was for sale and I couldn't afford to buy anything. Damian said nothing. When I tried to talk to him, he looked away, his eyes fixed on his phone or the TV or anything but me. Mom, just don't make a big deal out of it. She's stressed. She's trying to keep things organized. Organized. That's what he called it. But I knew what it really was. Control. Humiliation. A slow, deliberate campaign to make me feel like I didn't belong in my own home. I started buying my own groceries and keeping them in my room. I had a mini fridge in there from years ago, something I'd used when Damian was a teenager and would raid the kitchen at night. Now I stocked it with basics. Milk, bread, cheese, fruit. I used paper plates so I wouldn't have to touch her labeled dishes. I showered late at night when they were asleep, so I wouldn't have to see the little sticky note on the shampoo bottle. I became invisible in my own house. A ghost. Some mornings, I'd leave for work before dawn, and I'd sit in my car in the hospital parking lot, just breathing, just trying to remember who I was before all this. I was Esperanza Morales. I was a nurse. I was a mother. I was a woman who'd built a life from nothing. But inside that house, I felt like nothing at all. But I wasn't just angry. I was scared, because I'd started noticing other things. Whispered conversations that stopped when I entered the room. Veronica on her phone, talking in low tones about property value and retirement homes. I'd catch fragments of sentences through closed doors. She's getting older. It's a lot of space for one person. We need to think about our future. And one night, I heard Damian say something that made my stomach drop. I was in the hallway, coming back from the bathroom, when I heard his voice from their bedroom. The door was cracked open just an inch. Once we sell, we'll have enough to cover everything. She'll be fine. They have good places for people her age. Some of them are actually really nice. Veronica's voice was softer, but I caught the words. Your mother's stubborn. She won't agree to it. Damian sighed. She doesn't have to. The house is in both our names now, remember? After that loan thing, I made sure. I stood frozen in the hallway, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst. My hand was pressed against the wall to keep myself steady. The house is in both our names. What did that mean? The loan thing. What loan thing? They were planning to sell my house. My house. The one I'd sacrificed everything to buy. And they were going to send me away like I was some kind of burden they needed to get rid of. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, watching the shadows move as cars passed outside. I thought about everything I'd given up, the vacations I never took, the relationships I never pursued, the dreams I put aside, all for Damian, all so he could have a chance. And this was what it had come to, him planning to sell my home out from under me while I was still living in it. But somewhere in the dark, around 3 a.m. when the house was completely silent, a voice inside me whispered, "No, not like this. You didn't survive 43 years as a nurse to be thrown away now. You didn't work yourself to the bone to let someone steal what you built." The next morning, I waited until they left. Damian went to work, or wherever he went these days. He'd been vague about his job lately, and I suspected there wasn't much of one. Veronica left for her yoga class, her designer bag slung over her shoulder, her car keys jingling. I watched from the window as she drove away, and then I stood in the hallway for a moment, listening. The house was silent, except for the hum of the refrigerator, the new one and the old one both, and the distant sound of a car passing outside. Then I went into their room. My heart was racing. I'm not the kind of person who goes through other people's things. I'd raised Damian to respect privacy, to respect boundaries, but something had shifted in me. I needed to know. I needed to understand what was happening in my own house. I opened drawers carefully, putting everything back exactly as I found it. Clothes, receipts, old birthday cards, nothing important. I looked under the bed, nothing but dust and a forgotten sock. Then I went to the closet. I pushed aside hanging clothes, feeling along the back wall, and finally, I found it. A folder, hidden at the back of Damian's closet, underneath a stack of old sweaters. Inside were papers, documents. My hands trembled as I pulled them out and sat on the floor, spreading them around me. The first thing I saw was a real estate appraisal showing the current value of the house, $450,000. I'd bought it for $90,000, 25 years ago. I'd had no idea it was worth so much now. The next document was a printout from a retirement facility. Sunset Gardens, Senior Living. Monthly costs highlighted in yellow, $3,500 a month. There were notes in the margins in Damian's handwriting. Medicare? How long until she qualifies? I felt sick, but the worst was yet to come. The loan agreement. I pulled it out, and my name was right there at the top. Co-signer, Esperanza Morales. 5 years ago. Damian had come to me, said he needed help starting a business, a food truck. He was so excited, so full of plans. He said it would change his life. I co-signed for $40,000 because I believed in him, because I was his mother, and that's what mothers do. The business never happened. The food truck was never purchased. I asked him about it once, and he'd gotten angry, defensive. It didn't work out, Mom. Can you just let it go? So I did. I let it go. But here was the proof. He'd never paid back a single cent. And according to the documents in front of me, he'd been making payments. Small ones. Irregular ones. But he'd been listing them as payments from me to him, not the other way around. He was claiming I owed him money. There was more. Bank statements showing deposits into Damian's account that didn't match any job I knew about. Transfer records. And at the very bottom of the pile, a handwritten note in Veronica's looping script. Once the house sells, split, 60-40. Tell her 50-50 if she asks. Use the loan as leverage if she resists. I sat on the floor, the papers scattered around me like pieces of a life I no longer recognized. And I cried. Not quiet tears. Deep, wrenching sobs that came from somewhere I didn't know existed. Not because I was sad. Well, yes, I was sad. But more than that, I was done. Finished. I'd given this boy everything, and he'd turned into a man I didn't recognize. A man who would lie, manipulate, and steal from his own mother. A man who would let his wife humiliate me in my own home while he planned to profit from my loss. I thought about all the nights I'd stayed up with him when he was sick, the times I'd gone without so he could have new shoes, a school trip, a birthday party. I thought about the day I taught him to ride a bike, running alongside him until my lungs burned, cheering when he finally found his balance. Where was that boy now? What had happened to him? But as I sat there, something shifted inside me. It was like a door opening in a dark room. I thought about all the patients I'd cared for over the years, the ones who'd been abused, neglected, taken advantage of by family members who were supposed to love them, the elderly woman whose son had drained her bank account, the man whose daughter had forged his signature to take his house. I'd seen it all, and I'd always told them the same thing. You deserve better. You deserve to fight. You don't have to accept this just because they're family. And now, it was time to take my own advice. I stood up, my knees creaking, and gathered the papers carefully. I put them in my purse. Then I made the bed, closed the closet door, and walked out of that room. I had work to do. 2 days later, I sat in a lawyer's office on the 3rd floor of a building downtown. His name was Marcus Chen, and he came recommended by a colleague at the hospital whose sister had gone through something similar. The office smelled like old books and coffee. There was a window behind his desk that looked out over the street, and I could see people walking by, living their normal lives, unaware that mine was falling apart. Marcus was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with kind eyes and a firm handshake. He didn't waste time with small talk. I showed him the documents I'd brought, and he put on reading glasses, going through each page carefully. His expression grew darker with each one. The silence stretched out. I could hear the clock on the wall ticking, the muffled sound of traffic outside. "This is fraud," he said finally, looking up at me. "An elder abuse, financial exploitation of a senior. You have grounds for eviction, restitution, and emotional damages. Depending on how you want to proceed, there could be criminal charges as well. If you want to pursue this, I can file within the week." I looked at him, my hands folded in my lap. They were shaking slightly, so I pressed them together. "What will happen to them?" He leaned back in his chair, studying me. "They'll be notified through official channels. Legally, they'll have to vacate the property. It's in your name, and they have no legitimate claim to it despite what your son may have told his wife. And depending on how far you want to take this, your son could face serious consequences. Fraud, misrepresentation, Financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. These aren't small charges. We're talking potential jail time if the DA decides to prosecute. Jail time. My son. In jail. I thought about Damien as a little boy. 5 years old, gap-toothed, bringing me dandelions from the yard and calling them flowers. 7 years old, crying in my arms after a nightmare. 12 years old, so proud when he made the honor roll. The way he used to hold my hand when we crossed the street. The way he'd crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, even when he was too old for it, and I'd stroke his hair until he fell asleep. "Mrs. Morales?" Marcus said gently. "This is a difficult decision. I understand if you need time. Do it," I said. My voice was steady, stronger than I felt. "File everything. I want them out of my house." He nodded slowly. "I need to be clear about what this means. Your relationship with your son will likely be permanently damaged. This isn't something you can take back once it's in motion. Family court, especially in cases like this, tends to create rifts that don't heal." I met his eyes. "My relationship with my son is already damaged. He just doesn't know it yet." 3 days later, Marcus arrived at the house. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I'd taken the day off work, called in sick for the first time in 6 months. I stayed in my room, sitting on my bed, listening through the door. My hands were clenched in my lap, my heart hammering against my ribs. I heard the knock. Sharp, official, 3 times. Then I heard Veronica's voice, sharp and irritated. "Who are you?" "My name is Marcus Chen. I'm here on behalf of Esperanza Morales," he said calmly. "Professional. I have legal documents regarding this property and outstanding debts." There was a long silence, then footsteps. Damian must have come from the living room. "What are you talking about? What documents?" "Your mother is filing for eviction and restitution. You've been living in her home without contributing to expenses, and there are financial discrepancies related to a loan you co-signed. Additionally, there's evidence of elder abuse and financial exploitation. You have 30 days to vacate the premises. After that, law enforcement will be involved. These are your copies." The explosion that followed was like nothing I'd ever heard. Veronica screamed. Actually screamed. High-pitched and furious. "This is insane! You can't just come here and... Who do you think you are?" Damian's voice rose over hers. "This is a mistake. There's no way my mother would... Let me talk to her. Where is she?" "Mrs. Morales has made her wishes clear," Marcus said, his voice still calm. "All communication should go through my office from this point forward." "This is my house!" Veronica shrieked. "We pay for everything. That old woman doesn't do anything except..." "Ma'am, I'm going to stop you right there," Marcus interrupted. "This property is solely in Esperanza Morales' name. You have no legal claim to it. And I'd be very careful about the language you use. Everything you say can and will be documented." There were more accusations, more denials, more threats. I heard furniture scrape across the floor. I heard glass break, probably a vase or a picture frame. Veronica was sobbing now, angry, desperate sobs. "Call your mother. Call her right now. This is insane. She's insane." "I don't know what to say," Damian whispered, and his voice sounded hollow, lost. I don't understand. Mom, are you here? Can we talk?" I sat on my bed, tears streaming down my face, but I didn't make a sound. I didn't open the door. "If you have questions, contact my office," Marcus said. "The documents are clear. You have 30 days. Then I heard the front door close. The house went silent for a moment. Then Veronica started crying again. Not sad crying. Angry, desperate, wounded animal crying. "This is insane," she sobbed. "She can't do this. We'll fight it. We'll get a lawyer. She's old. She's clearly not thinking straight. We can prove she's not competent too." "Veronica, stop," Damian said quietly. "Just stop." "Stop? She's trying to throw us out on the street. Your own mother. After everything we've done for her." "Done for her?" Damian's voice cracked. "What have we done for her, Veronica? What have we actually done?" Silence. Then Veronica's voice, colder now. "I'm calling my father. He knows lawyers. Real lawyers. We're not just giving up." I heard her footsteps. Heard her grab her keys and purse. The front door opened and slammed shut. Her car started, tires screeching as she pulled away. And then Damian knocked on my door. Soft. Tentative. "Mom, are you in there? Can we talk? Please?" I closed my eyes. Talk to the lawyer, Damian. Mom, please. I don't understand what's happening. Can you just explain? I said talk to the lawyer. His footsteps retreated. I heard him in the living room, the sound of him sinking onto the couch, and then faintly I heard him crying. My son, crying. And I sat there on my bed, listening, my heart breaking into pieces even as I knew I was doing the right thing. The next few weeks were a nightmare. Veronica left first, packing her things in a fury. She hired a lawyer who sent threatening letters to Marcus, claiming I was mentally incompetent, claiming elder abuse laws didn't apply, claiming they had rights to the house. Marcus shut it all down with documentation, medical records showing I was perfectly competent, bank statements showing I'd paid for everything, the mortgage, the utilities, the property taxes, all in my name, all paid by me. Their lawyer dropped the case after 2 weeks. Veronica moved back in with her parents, who apparently were horrified when they learned what she'd been doing. Her mother called me once, apologizing through tears. "We didn't know," she said. "We didn't know she was treating you like that. I'm so sorry, Esperanza. So sorry." I accepted her apology because she wasn't the one who'd hurt me. But Veronica never apologized. Not once. Damian stayed longer, trying to talk to me, trying to explain. But I didn't let him. Every time he knocked on my door, I told him the same thing. Talk to the lawyer. He'd stand there for a minute, then walk away. I heard him on the phone sometimes, talking to Veronica, talking to friends, trying to figure out where everything had gone wrong. "I don't know what happened," he kept saying. "I don't know how it got to this, but I think he did. Somewhere deep down, he knew exactly what had happened, and why. He'd gotten comfortable. He'd stopped seeing me as his mother and started seeing me as a resource, something to be used. And when I finally stood up for myself, it shattered the illusion he'd been living in. Eventually, after about 3 weeks, he found a small apartment across town, 1 bedroom, on the 2nd floor of an old building. I didn't help him move. I didn't offer money or furniture or advice. I stayed in my room and listened as he carried boxes down the stairs, as he loaded his car, as he made trip after trip. And then finally, I heard the front door close one last time. His key turned in the lock from the outside. He was returning it, slipping it through the mail slot. I heard it hit the floor. Then his car started, and he was gone. I walked through the house that evening, room by room. It felt bigger somehow, emptier, but also lighter. I went into the guest room, his room. The bed was unmade, but everything else was gone. No clothes in the closet, no photos on the dresser, just empty space. I stood there for a long time, remembering the day he was born, the way the nurse had placed him in my arms and said, "He's perfect." And he had been. Perfect and tiny, and mine. What had happened to that boy? When had he stopped being mine and started being this? I didn't have an answer. Maybe there wasn't one. Maybe people just change. Slowly, in ways you don't notice until suddenly they're a stranger. But he wasn't completely gone. A week after he moved out, he got a job at a warehouse, loading trucks. It wasn't much, but it was honest work. And slowly, painfully, he started paying me back. The first payment arrived 2 weeks after he left. A check for $50, with a note. "I'm sorry. I'll do better." Then $100 the following month. Then $75. The amounts varied, depending on his hours, but they kept coming. It would take years to cover what he owed. But that wasn't the point. The point was that he was finally taking responsibility, finally acting like an adult instead of a child who expected his mother to fix everything. I deposited each check, and each time I did, I felt a tiny bit of hope. Not for us to go back to how things were. That was impossible. But for something new. Something built on honesty instead of obligation. 6 months later, I was sitting in my kitchen, drinking coffee on a Saturday morning. The house was quiet in the best way. No tension, no labels, no whispered conversations behind closed doors. Just peace. The morning light came through the window, soft and golden, and I could hear birds outside. I'd started taking better care of myself. I'd cut back my hours at the hospital. I'd joined a book club with some other nurses. I'd even started painting again, something I hadn't done since Damian was a baby. I was reading the newspaper when I heard a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone. I set down my coffee and went to answer it. And there he was. Damian. He looked older, tired. His hands were rough now, calloused from work. and he'd gotten a haircut, but there was something different in his eyes, something I hadn't seen in years. Humility, maybe even wisdom. "Can I come in?" he asked quietly. His voice was tentative, like he was afraid I'd say no. I stepped aside. Of course. We sat at the kitchen table, and for a long time, neither of us spoke. I poured him a cup of coffee. He wrapped his hands around it, staring down into the dark liquid. The clock on the wall ticked. Outside, a car passed. Normal sounds. Life continuing. "I've been seeing a therapist," he said finally. "Twice a week. It was Veronica's mom who suggested it, actually, after everything fell apart." I nodded, sipping my coffee. "That's good. Yeah, it is. I'm learning a lot about myself. Not all of it is easy to hear." He looked up at me, and his eyes were red. "I'm sorry, Mom. I don't know how I became this person. I don't know how I let her, how I let myself." His voice broke. "You gave me everything. Everything. And I treated you like you were nothing, like you were in my way." I reached across the table and took his hand. It was rough now, calloused from lifting boxes, from working long hours in the warehouse. So different from the soft hands I remembered. "I know," I said, and I did. Because loving someone doesn't mean letting them destroy you. Sometimes, it means standing your ground so they can finally learn to stand on their own. "Veronica and I are getting divorced," he said. "She's already moved on, engaged to some guy her parents introduced her to. Someone with money." He said it without emotion, like he was reporting the weather. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, though I wasn't. Not really. I'm not. She wasn't good for me, and I wasn't good for her. We were both using each other. Me for stability, her for status. It wasn't real. He took a sip of coffee. "I've been thinking a lot about you, about what you must have gone through, raising me alone. I never really understood it before, how hard it must have been." "It was hard," I said honestly. "But you were worth it. Even now, after everything, you were worth it." He started crying then. Not loud, dramatic crying, just quiet tears rolling down his face. "I don't know if I can ever make this right." "You don't have to make it right," I said. "You just have to keep trying, keep showing up, keep being honest." That's all I ever wanted. We talked for 2 hours that day. Really talked. About his job, about his therapy, about his mistakes, about Veronica and her family, about the warning signs he'd ignored, about the man he'd become, and the man he wanted to be. And I listened. Really listened. Not as a mother trying to fix her son, but as one adult listening to another. When he left, he hugged me at the door. A real hug. Long and tight. "Can I come back next week?" he asked. "Of course," I said. "You're always welcome here, Damian. Always." And he has. Every Saturday morning he knocks on the door at 9 o'clock. We have coffee together. We talk. Sometimes we don't talk much at all. Just sit in comfortable silence, reading the paper or watching the birds in the yard. He's not the son I raised, not yet. But he's learning to be the man he should have been all along. And that's enough. Today, I live alone in the house I fought for. The house I bled for. The house that represents every sacrifice I ever made. And it's mine. Truly, completely mine. Damian visits once a week, sometimes twice. We have coffee together. We talk. Really talk. About his job. He's gotten a promotion, managing a team now. About his therapy. He's working through childhood issues, learning to set boundaries. About his dreams. He wants to go back to school, maybe study business, do it right this time. And me? I'm still a nurse. I still work too many hours, though not as many as I used to. But when I come home now, the house is mine, the fridge is mine, the peace is mine, and that's worth everything. I've started volunteering at a women's shelter on my days off, helping other women who are going through what I went through, women who are being exploited by family members, women who've lost themselves in the process of caring for others. I tell them what I learned. You can't pour from an empty cup. You can't save someone else by drowning yourself. Last month, one of my patients at the hospital, an elderly man named Robert, told me his daughter was pressuring him to sell his house and move in with her. He was miserable about it, but he felt obligated. I sat with him after my shift ended, and I told him my story, all of it. The labels, the betrayal, the lawyer, the fight. And when I finished, he was crying. "Thank you," he said. "Thank you for showing me it's okay to say no." That's when I realized my pain has a purpose. My story matters. Not just for me, but for everyone else who's been made to feel small in their own life. If this story made you feel something, share it. Share it with someone who needs to hear that it's okay to say no, that it's okay to fight for your own dignity, that it's okay to love someone and still protect yourself from them. And subscribe to this channel, because every day, we bring you stories that remind you, kindness doesn't mean weakness. Love doesn't mean surrender. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is stand up for yourself, even when it breaks your heart. Some people will call me cruel. Some will say I should have forgiven him without the fight, that a mother should never turn her back on her son. But I didn't turn my back. I stood up. There's a difference. You can't save someone from drowning if you're drowning too. I had to let go so he could learn to swim. And the most loving thing I ever did for my son was refuse to let him destroy us both. I learned something important through all of this. Boundaries aren't walls. They're bridges. When you set a boundary, you're not pushing someone away. You're creating space for a real relationship to exist. A relationship built on respect instead of exploitation. On honesty instead of manipulation. On love instead of obligation. Damien and I will never have the relationship we had when he was young. That innocent, uncomplicated love is gone. But we're building something new. Something more real. Something that acknowledges we're both human. Both flawed. Both trying our best. And maybe that's better than what we had before. Maybe that's what real love looks like. Not perfect, not easy, but honest. Last Saturday, as he was leaving, Damien turned to me at the door. "Mom," he said, "I know I'll never be able to repay you for everything you've given me. The money, yes, I'm working on that. But the sacrifices, the years of your life you gave up for me, I can never repay that. All I can do is try to be worthy of it." I touched his face, the way I used to when he was small. "You don't have to be worthy of my love, Damien. You just have to be honest. That's all I ever wanted. And now, finally, we're both learning to breathe, learning to live, learning that sometimes love means holding on, and sometimes it means letting go, and sometimes, if you're very lucky, it means finding your way back to each other, different than before, but maybe, just maybe, better for it." The sun is setting now as I write this. The light coming through my kitchen window is warm and golden. There are no labels on my refrigerator, no tension in the air, just peace. The kind of peace you only find after you've fought for it, after you've claimed your right to exist, to be respected, to be seen. I am Esperanza. I am 67 years old. I am a nurse, a mother, a fighter, and I am home.